The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
On our Thursday Dialogue this morning, I want us to have a conversation about culture, the evolution of culture over time. And I want to center this more around your own experiences and your own choices around how you've practiced culture. How do you balance cultural evolution and preservation? Whether you're talking lobola or initiation schools or umemulo, ancestral veneration, or any ritual perhaps that you practice, how do you practice it today compared to how you used to practice that before? How far is it allowed culture to evolve, and at what point do we cross the line? Because culture is often described as this living, dynamic force. But you've got mostly the younger generation now that are redefining cultural practices in new spaces and in their own expression. But critics are saying that you can't tailor-make culture. And I've always believed that culture is not static. It evolves as societies change and societies evolve. In fact, if culture remains rigid, then I think we risk becoming irrelevant, and we risk alienating the younger generations who live in this fast changing world. And I gave you an example earlier of, for instance, let's take the initiation school, right? They've begun integrating modern health and safety standards while still maintaining and retaining spiritual significance, which shows that evolution can preserve meaning while promoting well-being. So where should we draw the line between adapting traditions to fit modern society and preserving them in their original form to maintain cultural identity? How much flexibility should you as an individual have in shaping your own cultural identities? You can give us a call on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. Share your thoughts, please. Because some say when you modernize culture, then you run the risk of diluting it. Is that the view that you hold? Give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note. Let me introduce you to my two guests this morning. We've got Mbuso Khoza, who is a cultural practitioner, a musician as well, joining us on the line. Mr. Khoza, thank you so much for making time. Good morning.
Siyabonga kakhulu, and to the listeners of the 702.
We also have Tswako Mokoko, who is a cultural expert, languages and literature specialist and translator, also joining this chat. Thank you for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. And good morning to my colleague, the other side.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mokoko. Bab Khoza, let me start with you. Culture is often described as this living, dynamic force. What does this mean in a modern South African context?
I think any culture is subject to change. However, the peculiarity with the South African culture as evolution is not parallel, it's diverging because of the arrival maybe of other cultures that has devoured over the years. For instance, if you look at umemulo that you mentioned earlier, it can't be that if you want to perform umemulo for your daughter, and it has to coincide with the graduation. Graduation has nothing to do with umemulo. So now, if we evolve like that, we are diverging. It's not parallel with the logic and the history of that which we call is.
So, Mr. Mokoko, where do we then draw that line? How can we balance the evolution of culture with the preservation of culture?
I would say that there's no way in which culture would stay static amid many practices which come into being, especially in the form of whatever our society tends to learn from, because in the first instance, there are two things which we need to have in mind. Firstly, we have got those things which would naturally have to let go. Maybe because of the fact that they may not be progressive enough to sustain us. And at the same time, we would have things which we must protect, things which we have got to, which we must guard against, forgoing them, that is, leaving them into, forgetting about them, because those things are what we are, things which make us sustain, and at the same time make us more progressive. Because indeed, if you don't grow, you grow less. In other words, it's good that some aspects we have got to let go because of the fact that they are not consistent with those things which we hold dear.
Yeah.
That's how I can put it.
Yeah. So, Mr. Khoza, because there are some people who sort of criticize, especially the more younger generations that are trying to redefine cultural practices in their new spaces. They want to find their own expressions of culture, but other people say, well, you can't tailor culture per se. It's either you are for it and you practice things in the way they're supposed to be practiced because there's a reason why they were practiced that way, or you completely step out. And if you do something that fuses too many things, then do not call it culture. So I suppose what I'm asking is, at what point are we crossing the line? And at what point, as we appreciate this evolution of culture, do we acknowledge and appreciate that things may change and there are certain things that we may let go of, as Mr. Mokoko said?
Yeah, I think, in my view, in the world of heritage, in the world of culture, nothing goes to waste because history comes as an intervention to record events, more like the falling of the leaves, causing humors. It's something that you can, from time to time, speak about. But those cultures are born of history. History now is a thing of more like what you call the museology as an instrument where things are kept for heritage. Later, certain cultures are unable to be practiced. They will be in the books, we'll read about them. This is why we wear a certain way on certain times, meaning there is no way that we can go back and practice our culture exactly like our forefathers. However, we need to ask ourselves, what is it metaphysically, ideologically that we have left for our kids that comes in the form of knowledge of self? Our kids do not know themselves, and us as parents, we go around and say, oh, during our days. But even their parents were saying the same thing. It's a vicious cycle simply because we haven't been able to safeguard our culture. Look at the museums that are built. Who were the architects of that? Today, in the modern day, how are we saying, through all maybe the history of 1497, 1652, 1807, 1837, 1879, these battles, just to mention the few, or 1976, how do we sit down and recollect our memories so that they are now being consumed in the rhythm of the moment of now?
In the rhythm of the moment of now. I like that. So Mr. Khoza, then, to make sure I understand you, do you think then that sometimes we're too emotional about culture? For instance, even the issue of language, that we're too touchy even about language, because language is a core piece of culture.
Yes, language is intrinsic to the expression of culture, teaching, etc. However, people, even from the olden days, they used to wonder, and that's how languages got to evolve. That's how even semantic applicabilities of certain words got to evolve. You look at even the surnames like Tabete and Tabete and Tabete. Those, they fall under dental cliques. As soon as they move, when certain people are born in a certain area where a new language is spoken, they tend to mispronounce. Look at Amanguni, who left in 1820 here with Sushanga. Later, they're calling themselves Ngoni people. Because that's a morphological behavior found in these words, because where they're speaking isilozi, then they mispronounce Mnguni to Ngoni. So, but we never make time for this thing, Guma Museum, in the educational system, in terms of how one can just get to understand themselves easily. So,
Mr. Mokoko, there are some people who want to tailor fit, so to speak, how they practice that culture, and they want to express it their own way. I do remember someone in where, my family where I come from, who was about to pay lobola, and he didn't necessarily want the uncles and the aunts to be part of the negotiations as culture would dictate. And he said, I just want my older brother, my mom and my dad to go and negotiate lobola for me. For him, that's how he wanted to practice that culture of the two families coming together. I'm using that example because I'm trying to figure out, where do we then draw the line? Because some in the family felt, no, if you're going to do this, you've got to do it. The uncles and the aunts are an intricate piece in the expression of this cultural activity, in the expression of this unification of the two families. So are there certain things, Mr. Mokoko, you think, okay, that's untouchable, or must there be flexibility for people to decide how to express that culture, still keep the essence of it, but do it in a way that makes sense to them, makes them happy?
Indeed, Clement, that's already said, or that's it is understood. The concept of term culture is coterminous with terms such as society, language, belief systems, and attitudes, and all other kind of ways of life which made us to be what we are. It is true that we must guard against those fashionable kinds of intrusions into our culture, but on the other hand, let us make a point that the young ones and those who perhaps are easily taken over by other subcultures or fashionable cultures, let us teach them, let us encourage them that those which we suggest made us what we are today. Let's emphasize to them that yes, if you don't grow, you grow less, then let's encourage our museums. Let us encourage our cultural coming together to promote all those which are progressive, and at the same time those which doesn't make us pieces of paper flying all over the show, not understanding where they come from, and at the same time not expressing, and at the same time sustaining what indeed is our treasure.
Yeah. So, Mr. Khoza, the question then, I suppose, is how do we preserve, and maybe not preserve, but let me say this, how do we record then the true essence of how culture is practiced even now, or maybe from back then? Because I think, as you say, as we evolve, and at some point, some of us are going to start losing that. You spoke about museums. I mean, I've been to some of your lectures around the Battle of Isandlwana. Those things help us understand more about us and where we come from. But how intentional can we be then as South Africans to record those, so that at least there's a level of preservation of sorts? Because the older generation, abokoko nabomkhulu bayahamba, they pass away and they leave with that knowledge, and we have not been interested enough to learn about the way of doing things. And that way, that culture starts leaving us bit by bit.
Yeah, I'm just happy with the comment from my fellow guest around us collectively saying, oh, maybe this aspect of this culture is no longer maybe serving us as a nation. Instead of saying, oh, white people they're devouring our cultures. I want to go back to the idea of ilobolo and say how maybe if one can say exercising democracy and say, I mean, in my household, yes, I will still practice ilobolo, but traditionally in my household, this is how we're gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the elements that need to be understood, because evolutionary, before people got to have what you call the hunters era up to the agrarian culture to the industrialized culture that you are living in today, people used to wander, and there was no culture. They would just live, and they would have kids living under the caves and wander as per maybe there are no more fruits or there are no more animals. So now, but as the brain evolved, they began to come up with these cultures and say, if us as humans have evolved from the vegetative aspect of our soul to the animal up to the rational soul, we need to come up with what we call ilobolo, a dowry payment. Even in the Bible, you check Exodus, these illustrations that are historical. So, but now let us go back and check now in your culture individual. For instance, in isiZulu, I would say why people have to pay ilobolo. What is it that is needed from these animals? You would say, okay, 3 cows. Even the song Abesutu, likhadi libedi likhali lithathu angazi ngamusadi kushuthi litbili lithathu ngamthathu umfazi. Now we understand that this thing was not about the transactional aspect of it. Now you understand that in these cows, one of the cows maybe is going to pay homage to mom, one is for baba, and maybe the other one is for the ceremony to happen. You see, not all of these Lokuzana evolutions that are faulty that we have tried to fit our cultures in. So all I'm saying is once we understand these aspects, and now why Malume they are so important? Because one day, sociologically, you have a problem with this child, with this wife of yours, and maybe there are issues of abuse, misunderstanding. Who is going to be there? A social worker? Not all the time. We need now to say, how do we recraft our society with a view to move forward? But if we say we're going to evolve with our cultures, let us check what was the historical background before we focus on a figure and destroy the background.
Mr. Mokoko, maybe the same question to you as well around just preserving, and because I remember there was a time I was trying to, and I spoke to a cousin of mine, and I said, while we still have our uncles, especially the older uncles, we need to start, recording them. When we must make time, bring the camera and just record them for the purposes of just preserving the information about the family tree, but also information about our culture, so that, because we can see that we are slowly losing that, and not through it being modernized, but there are certain things we don't understand. When things happen, we still don't know, okay, what's to be done here? When there's a funeral, us, the younger generation, don't even know what are the certain things to do. What kind of food do you cook? How do you go about grieving, etc., etc.? What ways do you think people can try and preserve that knowledge? Because the older generation still have some of it, as evolved as it may be, and many of us really don't understand much about our culture. How can we go about preserving that?
Clement, my colleague the other side has said a mouthful, and it's only upon us from now, from now or as from this minute, that each and every family may take a decision that each and every time when there is a cultural do at home, let us just in one way or another make a point that every aspect of that mukete is recorded, and at the same time it must be reviewed all the time, not necessarily with the mukete for Mahadi or for Dikapulo and that type of thing. Let each and every aspect of our culture be recorded in its entirety, so that we, as time progresses, make a point that we emphasize to the young ones that, hey, this is now a near thing which was on its way out, now is an in thing. Let's explain to them that this is important. And this will perhaps, those of us who still, who are supposed to be and are still believing in ancestors, this will bring us luck. I think we need, it should be each and every family, each group, each society, that we sit down and at the same time make a point that we record, and at the same time make a point that geological sketches are made of each and every group, extended family, lineage, and so on. That's perhaps, I think, would strengthen these cultures, some of these aspects which are fading away, overtaken by those which we're not quite sure whether they're taking us to hell or they're taking us to the place of manna and so on.
Yeah. It's now 11:30. And I'm interested to hear how you are trying to record how things have been practiced before or are being practiced now, so that you're able to pick up the baton, so to speak. Because a lot of us, especially our generation, some of us don't really understand much about culture. So when there's a funeral or when your child goes to initiation schools, you don't even know where to begin. And I wonder how you are trying to record that, so that when your child goes to initiation school, or if you believe in that, or when there is a funeral, or when there is a wedding, and you still want to practice culture, you believe in it, then you know that these are the things that are supposed to be done, because we're losing that valuable information with our grandfathers, our grandmothers, our great aunts, uncles as they pass away. So how are you recording that? Share your thoughts with us. Give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note.
The Dialogue with Clement Manyathela.
It's not just another roundtable discussion.
Let's walk the talk on 702.
23 minutes before 12 o'clock, we're talking about the evolution of culture and how we can balance cultural evolution with preservation. Whatever you practice, whether it's culture you practice when there's lobola, when there's initiation schools, umemulo, or maybe ancestral veneration, whatever it is that you practice, how far is culture allowed to evolve, and at what point do we cross the line? And I've got some WhatsApp messages coming through. In fact, there's one I want to read because I think it really just encapsulates what we've been trying to say. Because you've got on the one side people who believe that, of course, culture is going to evolve as we evolve as a society. It's not static, right? It's a living, dynamic force. But you've got other people who say you can't tailor-make and tailor-fit culture. Then the minute you include some modern things or you allow modernity to influence how you practice it, then you've walked away. But listen to what this listener says on the WhatsApp line, who says, Clement, my issue with culture is that it leaves little room for autonomy. As soon as you disagree with cultural practices because logically they don't make sense in your life, then you are labeled by society as lost and seen in a negative light. It becomes a problem for everyone else and not the person who has made the decision, who doesn't see themselves as being lost or having lost anything and is content with their life and who they are. Ultimately, it's down to beliefs, which we don't necessarily all buy into. Let those who want to preserve cultures do that without shaming those for whom it is not important. That's a message there from Anonymous. You can send yours as well on 011-883-0702. That's the WhatsApp line. Otherwise, call us on 011-883-0702. In fact, let's go straight to your WhatsApps, and then I'll get my guests Mbuso Khoza and Tswako, Mokoko, to respond to some of them.
Good morning, Clement, and your guests. Interesting topic indeed. I think the struggle between relevance and identity is a major one. I believe there are things that are practiced that have spiritual reasoning that cannot be tainted regardless of what generation we are in or how revolutionary we are. And I also believe there are things that can be switched up or changed to fit in relevance to a particular generation.
Mr. Manyathela, you see, the cultural practices on this issue of lobola, particularly for black people, it is on another level. I'm not quite sure if maybe it is going to be even correct if it becomes regulated. There are so many loopholes, things that need to be addressed in that area because of in the near future that the whole cultural practice is going to become a nightmare. Thank you.
Hi, Clement and the team. My problem with culture is when culture is used to undermine women, especially in local negotiations where women are told that culture does not allow them to form part of local negotiations. But culture doesn't restrict women to raise their kids alone, because a poor mother raised her daughter alone, and then now it's time for local negotiations. Then culture is used to restrict her to form part of local negotiations. Be it draconian. David.
Thank you for your WhatsApp voice notes. Yeah, Mr. Khoza, any response to that?
I disagree with that ilobolo. It's not even a negotiation, so we discussion by the family, because if it's a negotiation, it means it's a payment. Auntie, like the elders who know the family culture are there. Even the other reason why they can't even be part of the leading part of that, Basazo Shah, that they're going to still get married to other surnames. So this is why they could not be involved. And there are other aspects that are not involving men in the culture. But in terms of the unevolving nature of the culture, the unquestionable nature of the culture, I do agree with it. I think we are at a stage where we really need to strip things down. What is history? What is culture? What is a tradition? What is heritage? So that all of these aspects are understood. And the ever-changing pattern of this planet and the universe, I think at this stage, we need to question how we are even interacting with our cultures, with our ancestors. It can't be the very same way that we used to do during the times of our forefathers, because many things have changed in the space. The electromagnetic fields are no longer as it was in the olden days. It was too quiet. Even the cows and the goats that we are using to communicate with our ancestors are not pure in terms of, did you look after it? Does it know you? Does its soul know you from when you're planning to perform that? So there's a lot that has been scattered. I think we need to say, I was saying this yesterday, maybe when you dream of your mother or your grandmother, maybe you're interacting with a higher intelligence, not even that being. But we are not accustomed to think like that. So I think it's high time that our kids are receiving help from us as elders to say, Mtanam, what is the surname? Isibongo. Oh, it's the name of that first person who is the head of the family. Oh, this is why we are identified with him. But before we use names, Ushaka Gasenza Ngakona, Yeshua Ben Yosef. In fact, people used to be called even by the areas and the mountains they come from. Look at Mary Magdala. That was the place. Mary of Magdala, late Mary Magdalene. So these are the things I think we need to give our kids logic on their culture and stop threatening our kids and say ancestors will be angry when it's us who are offended at that moment.
Yeah. Mpo, you're calling from Rosebank. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Clement, in your comments, you said something that is very, very important about about preserving the culture, recording it, having it documented, and sharing it. And in saying that, Clement, it reminded me as a boy growing into a man, meeting my wife and having kids, I've realized the importance of my culture, of my language, of my religion, and you know, like, if we have these things documented and we can go back to reference and to learn and to grow as a people, so that we can preserve where we come from, and you know, to have that source of belonging. It's like when you go home, you feel a certain way immediately when you get home. It's like, I'm where I belong. Even within your soul, you can feel it, that I am home. This is where I should be, you know. So it is really, really important, the discussion you're having, and, you know, for us to have places for like Basotho to know where to go to find out where they belong, for the Zulus, for the Tswanas, for each and every one of us to have these things documented in libraries, on the internet, in books, you know, bookshops, so that we know where we belong, and we can have a point of reference where we can reference to, and we can practice our cultures, our religions, you know, our heritage proudly. Yeah, absolutely. In Rosebank, I couldn't have said it better.
Good day, Clement. This is Theo from Eduduza. Clement, we are timelessly and continuously detached from our being as Africans by firstly the modernization, all these things that comes. It started a long time ago with Christianity that actually made sure that we live our culture. And thereafter came the apartheid with divide and rule, because we're no longer, you know, attached to our families and all that. Now it's all that, cell phones and all that. And remember, we no longer sit around fire. Our grannies used to sit with us around the fire and tell all these stories, family tree stories and all that. So we no longer have that. Modernization is really detaching us from our being. Theo from Eduduza, thanks.
Hey, Clement, I love this conversation because I grew up with 3 different cultures. My parents are immigrants, and I was born in their current country of residence before moving to South Africa. So I have like a multicultural background of 3 different cultures. And I strongly believe that culture is subjective. It's evolutionary. I've spent my whole life being so torn between, which culture do I belong to? Which culture do I identify with? But the truth is that I identify with all of them. And as people, I think we need to have that fluidity and flexibility to embrace whatever culture we want to embrace, whether it be the culture of your parents that you were born into, or the culture of the country you live in, or a new culture that you want to create for your family. So I do believe culture is fluid, and thanks for having the conversation. Have a good day.
Yeah. Sure. Let me bring in now Professor Mbuso, who is a heritage expert and socio-political analyst. Prof, I appreciate you also joining this chat, and we've been trying to figure out this balance between one, you want to preserve culture, but also their realities around society that's been evolving and culture that evolves. Do you think there's a point there where there can be a balance?
Well, Clement, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm at a conference here at University of Zulu, so I've been in and out. But it's a very interesting topic. We have to understand that culture is what we do every day. And it evolves with time. It keeps on changing, and the agents of change in the case of Africa and South Africa were missionization, agents of rapid change, missionization, education, urbanization, industrialization, as well as other social factors that you come across when you are existing within those constraints or within those realities. Yeah. Now, if you live in a forum, of course, we are not going to go out and slaughter a cow anywhere. So that fades automatically. But what happens all the time, we have this idealism that culture is static and that it does not move. What eventually happens is that as culture evolves, human beings will choose certain aspects of culture and maintain very vigorously. And that is what is called heritage. Now, heritage is always about the past. You need it in order to be able to define the present in relation to the past. But in reality, you are not living in that past anymore. You cannot live in that past because of the circumstances that I have pointed out. So what happens is, in terms of preservation, countries will build museums and archives and all of those libraries and everything like that, so as you can go there and learn about the culture over time. And then when it comes to the issues of heritage, countries will also do the same. What they do is they heritagize and look at the best from the past. And then sometimes you'll find that that is in the books and everywhere else. But in reality, culture evolves very quicker than you can imagine.
So another thing that I realize, Prof, is that especially the younger generation, they're asking questions, the why question, right? And over time, they feel like people have neglected to share the why, to ask that why question behind certain practices. So now when you are raised in a household, you're expected to just do certain things. But when you ask, okay, what's the reason for doing things this way? What's the reason for doing them this way? There's never really an explanation. Sometimes our parents, our elders don't even know why things are being done in that particular way. What do you say to that? Like, is culture meant to be understood? The practices, are we meant to know why we practice them? Or the basis of culture itself is to just follow through, and even if you don't understand why you are doing things the way you do?
Well, day-to-day people may not have the instruments to answer the question why. But usually, as somebody who studied culture and heritage extensively, I know that, for example, some of the answers you will find after the effect. And that's because, for example, let's take the issue of a Zulu wedding as a cultural event. That's a perfect experience, but if I am to be stopped right now as I'm doing it to say why, maybe I can be able to explain, but at the level of cultural practicing or manifestation, people usually get overwhelmed with all these things, many things that are happening at the same time, that to understand culture, sometimes you have to withdraw a little bit from it and be able to look at it objectively, then understand why, for example, the practice of lobola, why the practice of wedding songs in a wedding, why there must be many people attending your wedding, not to judge and so on, but to be witnesses in future that you actually did get married, and to compliment you for that. The why you dress like this is always there, but sometimes day-to-day people are not able to go beyond saying this is how it is done, but the why part of it will always be problematic. So that's not surprising at all, especially when you grow up in an urban area where you suddenly been attending all those schools and you suddenly hear that so-and-so is getting married or this and that is happening. And if you go to marry in a traditional way, this is how you dress up. And then people will not be able to tell you, you dress up like that because they're trying to entice the ancestors that what they left here of imvunulo, of our traditional wear, you have not abandoned it, and so on. And you find that culture sometimes interacts a lot with religion. And some of the things, as you know, in religion are very difficult to explain.
Got it. Professor Mbuso Khoza, heritage expert and socio-political analyst, thank you so much for coming through. Let's go to your WhatsApps.
Clement, what a wonderful conversation, and the quality of the speakers that you brought. Thank you so much. And I also love how your line of questioning, which brings everything into where we are now. And for me, that's where the interesting part comes, to say where culture meets culture. Because now culture, which is like, for me, they're defined differently. Culture is what the ethnic rituals and activities and all those languages, and culture is in what we are forming or how we are as society, which is also forming its own culture in a way. So I think that's actually where the interesting part is, because the two must coexist, and they are quite conflicting to a large degree, because now modernization, relevancy and all that in society, how we live, it's its own culture, it's meeting culture. So culture meets culture. Thank you so much. I love the topic and keep on listening. Thank you so much. Kifile here.
Here we have got these topics: heritage, tradition, and culture. A deeper understanding is needed, as well as the background, so that we do not commercialize either heritage, tradition, or culture. And that which is passed on from one generation to the next should really have the roots, where it comes from and where it leads us. Where it evaporates at the end of the day. Thank you, Clement.
Well, some WhatsApp texts that have come through here. Miss Lee says, Clement, change is inevitable. One beautiful aspect of culture evolving, but yet still keeping to the practice, is lobola. Before, families would send literal walking cows, but now we live in the burbs and locations, and we do the EFT payments during negotiations. We still practice lobola negotiations. And on the other hand, we practice safety of not having lots of money on hand. That's a message from Tabi in Senton. Another person says, hi, Clement. I believe that culture is lost when there are family cultural functions taking place. Some of our nieces and nephews tend to treat such occasions as an opportunity to entertain their own friends, and they don't see it as an opportunity to learn about their own culture. That's a message from Simon.
Hi, Clement. What is culture? Culture is a way of life. And, as well as animals have evolved and adapted to the current situations, the living situations, we also, as humans, as part of the animal kingdom, we have evolved. Our way of life evolves in order for us to survive. And I think many of us no longer slaughter goats every year, saying that we are calling upon our ancestors, because some of us believe that they are always with us even when we do not slaughter a goat.